Hello, everybody. Today we have a special guest with us. So why don't you say hello?
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good here.
It's good. Okay. First question I'd like to ask is if you had this is a bit of a kind of big starter. If you had infinite resources, where could you see Blade and Sorcery being?
If there was infinite resources, what? Well, you know what? It's like we had this plan years ago. This was actually even before we released 1.0. We had this an ambition that when we released 1.0, the original idea was that we would keep supporting the game with expansion packs. And then when I say expansion packs, I'm not talking about DLC. I'm talking about like um, the good old days of like when like you would have like Baldur's Gate like expansion pack or Oblivion expansion pack where there were like big juicy chunks of game,
Yeah.
not like little cosmetic DLC or stuff like that, but big chunks of game, and they were fairly priced and they were worth buying. And if you're a fan of the game, you would like to get it because it expanded the game greatly.
Yeah.
So we had this idea that like, oh, it would be real cool if we could end up doing expansions, and each expansion could be a new part of the world, and it would have, unique enemies for that world, maybe a new spell that would go with that world, dungeons that match that same kind of biome. So for example, if it was like a Cartib expansion, it would be like, desert biome dungeons. Centara would be kind of watered biome dungeons. And and also to go with this, we were exploring the idea of like monsters as
Ooh.
AI enemy. So this was like awesome. We were really hyped for this. But then when we ended up doing 1.0, we were murdered by our game framework, which is called Thunder Road. And the situation with that is basically, it started off as just a one man project with Cosby all those years ago, 8 years ago. And just from 8 years of adding people into the project and different people working on it, it created what's called spaghetti code, which is like basically what it is it's just unstable.
Right.
And
It's
like you'll change one thing and 20 things will break.
yeah.
So it became unmanageable basically, and when we got 1.0 out the door, I mean it took us almost 2 years to do that update. So you could see like, well, now it's like we're thinking it's like it's just diminishing returns. It's not going to be possible to do a large expansion pack because we'll spend so much time fixing what we break. So that led us on to saying, okay, we can't do any more content for Blade and Sorcery. But of course, we we went back on that by releasing the Byeth updates, which were kind of like a little taste of what the expansions could have been, like releasing some content. But anyway, that's what I would have done if I hadn't been for the game framework. That's what I would have loved to done. I would have loved to expand the entire world of Yet. But the silver lining to it is, um, now that we know we really can't continue to develop on Thunder Road, uh, Cosby was working on Thunder Road 2, which is our new and improved game framework. Fixes, rights a lot of wrongs from Thunder Road. It's much faster. It has to do a much more ambitious project. So we're working on that right now, and then the ultimate goal there is that we will release a new game. It's not going to be Blade and Sorcery 2. We're doing something creatively new for this one. Um, but that's the direction we kind of had to go. So the Viet updates are just a little taste of what the expansions could have been, and also kind of giving content for players while we work on Thunder Road 2 and the new game.
Yeah. I personally I've been loving the teasers that you guys have been giving for the new sandbox maps.
Awesome, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
which
That would
brings
nearly that very nearly didn't happen, by the way, because it was
oh
like, if you remember the Rakta update when it was released, that was kind of the plan. It was like everything was going to be like Rakta, and then there was just loads of situations where like, I turned around to the guys, or like the guys turned around and we're all just saying like it feels like there should be enemies, like, like
yeah.
if we're releasing the update, like there should be the guys in this armor, and that was kind of like the first little taste of scope creep. And then I was like, it feels like there should be waves, and then it feels like they should be able to play these guys in the sandbox dungeons, and then the toughest thing to get through the team was the saying there should be maps, you know, because when I first pitched that to Cosby, he's like, "Oh, come on, like this is you know, like this is way too much scope, you know." And then how he kind of came around on it was because we put a pause on the new video game development while Cosby is still working on the core gameplay. And so when that happened, it freed up some of the environment team on the new game. And so I was able to kind of convince, like, hey, look, if the guys aren't working on the new video games, any chance we could put them back in Blade and Sorcery? And they were really happy to do that because it gave, you know, it was they got to work, they got to develop something really cool.
Right.
So that's how that came about, and I was so happy. And that's why I feel like with Centara, it's a much more packaged update. It's how I feel like they all should be and how they all will be going forward.
Yeah, it is. I really like I really like the ship, the how it looks.
Cool.
I feel like it's gonna be something like it's gonna be very different from like the rest of the other sandbox maps. I feel. Um,
Yeah, different vibe for sure. Yeah.
yeah. Question: You showed a photo of what I can presume is a lighthouse, but
hmm
it seems to be cracked in the middle and has like gravity swirls around it. Are you
hmm
able to kind of tease what's going on in there, or?
Um, I'll tell you this much: you can mess with it, and it has some little kind of hidden features, you know, and it's fun. But do I want to spoil it? That's the question. I nearly posted a video in the news, kind of showing it, but then I said, nah, you know, I'll keep it a little surprise for people to find out when they play the map. It'll be funner to figure out.
Hmm.
So maybe I won't spoil it.
All right. Um, brings me to the next question. In the Steam post, you posted the Rakta Blade and Sorcery OST. Is there gonna be
Hmm.
one for the Centara?
There is one for Centara, and it's brilliant. I like it even more than the Racta one. And I'm going to put up a video, probably in the next week or two. All I have to do is basically just record a little video footage to go with it, and
Right.
then I'll post it on YouTube. Yeah, it's real cool. It kind of like it invokes kind of like the deep, and it invokes kind of images of like huge ships and stuff. It's real cool.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's the same composer who's done all our game music. So you know, just a kind of a homogenous kind of you know vibe throughout all the music. You know, that's real cool.
Yeah, no, it. I really like. I think. My favorite OST by your composer is probably Canyon.
Oh, that's an awesome one. It goes so hard too.
I love Canyon. It's
Yeah.
literally my favorite sandbox map because of the music there.
Yeah, well, actually, in that case, you may like the Cartive music, which he actually just finished the other day.
Oh.
So he's kind of like ahead of schedule, you know. So he's like doing all our music,
Ooh.
and he was playing it for us. He's doing some tweaks in it, but when I heard it, I was like, it's not exactly like Canyon, but it kind of reminds me as a Canyon vibe. So I think you'll like that one.
All right. I'm literally just scrolling down on the news posts, asking questions.
Yeah.
Um, how bad was it for Wooly to do the buoyancy?
Um, well, not bad. You know, I think he had a ton of fun, a little too much fun, maybe. But it was, you know, it was a real scope creep kind of thing. You know, I don't even know how it started. I think it was like, it just started with the idea of like, hey, if we're doing a water map, don't you think things should be able to flow? And it's like, oh yeah, things should be able to flow. And then it's like, well, hang on a second, apples float different from, you know, iron bars. And then it was like, you know, figuring that out. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, what about bodies? And then you kind of start delving into how bodies flow, like in terms of like animation, like because they don't just float like a stiff, you know, a stiff board.
Yeah.
So he started messing with that, and then it was like, well, you know, what if the bodies are missing arms or legs? It's like, oh my god. And before you knew it, it was like a whole feature on its own. It was like this whole buoyancy simulation developed. So yeah, it was definitely a scope creep kind of thing. How it goes. It's always how it goes.
Yeah. Um, what was the inspiration for all the achievements?
Um, that's a good question. I kind of had my own agenda, and then a couple of the other lads had kind of opinions on how it should be, and Shrew had he's our lead game designer had opinions on how it should be. My opinion on it was I feel like achievements should always be something like an Easter egg in a game. That's my
Hmm.
vibe. I hate it. Like as a gamer myself, I hate games when I play them, and you load up the game and you get an achievement, and the achievement says, load the game for the first time, or
Right.
like you purchase something from a shop, or like you finish the first level and it says level one has been completed. I hate that. Like they're the kind of achievements where they're kind of like railroad track achievements, where you get them from playing the game. I just
Right.
think it's such a boring thing, and I know why they're there. They're there because they incentivize players to keep playing the game. And actually, one of our developers was saying there's another hidden reason why sometimes developers do it, which is that it helps developers get metrics on how long players are playing the game. So, for
Right.
example, if only 33% of people have ever gotten to you know halfway through your game and unlocked achievement for that, well, then that's telling you, hey, like 66% of people aren't even playing the second half of a game. So, that's fair enough. But personally, I hate them. I think achievements should be more fun, explorable Easter eggs in their own right. So any of the achievements you see where they're kind of like little community jokes or like things to discover, like find Baron's hat or find Jonathan the chicken, those kind of things, or like find the place from the trailer, all those kind of stuff. They were the achievements I wrote, and I want them to all be like that. But I remember, some of the guys, they really felt like let's put a couple of completionist type achievements in there because there are people in the world who enjoy them. So they're the ones like, unlock every weapon and, finish X wave in survival and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't so crazy about those kind of ones, but I was willing to compromise. As long as I got my Easter egg achievements, I was willing to compromise. So that's how that came about.
Hmm. Um, what was the kind of thought process behind the Flintlock?
Oh, that's a good question too. So the obvious thing you would think with flintlocks and stuff is that it's going to be realistic physics simulation, realistic gun. I personally love that time period. It is literally my favorite time period. Muskets are literally my favorite weapon of all weapons. But there was two kind of major problems. One was that um, Cosby was real on the fence about do we want to add gunpowder or not, or like something, some kind of fancy version of gunpowder. Do we want to add that or not? And what are the implications of that? Like to suddenly have guns in the world of Blade and Sorcery. And I agree. I think it's a little murky.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was if we did a realistic gun, um, I don't know if you're familiar with like the loading of muskets and stuff like that, but it's multi-step process.
Yeah.
Takes about 15 seconds maybe, and we don't do tutorials on Blade and Sorcery, so our player's going to enjoy doing this, and also is it going to even be worth doing at that point? If it takes 15-20 seconds to load the gun and shoot a bullet, is it even worth doing? You could literally just bang the guy over the head with the gun, like so that was like a big thing too. So it was my opinion on it was I felt like okay, if we're not going to go down that road of simulation of gunpowder, which I agree we should not, then I said we should not make a magical gun where it's just like pew pew pew. Like don't make a gun that just shoots magic bullets. That was I insisted upon that, because I just thought it's gonna feel too much like a mod, and just the idea of like I really hate the idea of it just like shooting little magic bullets like. So My vibe on it was like, let's make it more like a blunderbuss or something, where it's like, if it's gonna shoot magic, let it shoot a big old blast, like bang, like dragon's breath fire or something like that. You know, that was kind of
Yeah.
my. I had a little gif and I was showing the guys. I was like, make it like this, like you know, this is what we should do. So okay, it takes a while to load, but then it's like bam, and it'll be fun as hell.
Right.
So Cosby was really into that idea, and then that was it. We were locked into that idea then, and then the imbue thing worked out perfectly because okay, instead of like loading a slow flintlock pistol, you're almost like loading it by imbuing it. Takes a couple of seconds to imbue, and then of course the guy starts spitballing the ideas of oh, what if it shoots different bullets, or you know different magical blasts. So the gravity one will push them away, and like a huge just arc of blowing people away. The fire one is like my dragon's breath, and then the lightning one was a surprise. It just completely gibs characters, just explodes. So work was so good, and Laneka was primarily the developer on that. And you know he's like, you know, it just balance is not a word with Laneka, and I love it. You know, so he went big with it, and that's exactly how I hoped it was going to be, just big. You know, and that's exactly how it turned out. Turned out really, really big and cool. By the way, just in case some viewers are curious, because some people were asking me, do the weapons stay imbued when you put them in the holster? They do. So you could put like, you know, loaded guns in your holster like a pirate, and then you know pull them out and shoot them
Ooh.
at leisure.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and also they're moddable.
Oh.
They were developed in such a way that the guns are moddable. So like if you had a modder who say let's say had an ice spell or something like that, the modder could mod our guns to make it shoot ice.
Oh.
So you can imagine, lots of
Yeah.
fun to be had.
That is. Oh, I can see some. I can see some things
Yeah.
coming with that, especially with like Silk's Crystallic or
Oh,
like
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Ryan's like waterbending or airbending, right?
yeah, yeah,
I can see some
yeah.
cool things coming from those onto the gun.
Oh, water would be good. What would water be? That would be an
Ooh,
interesting one.
I feel like it would probably just be like just like a burst. It'll like either ice because waterbending is all like waterbending and then ice, or like just a big like torrent of water. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it could knock them over, like as if they slip or something like that.
Yeah, I can see some cool things coming from
Yeah,
modded. Uh,
definitely.
Final question about the Centara update before I move on to like PSVR and like what's next for Frog. Uh, the concoctions. What was
Oh yeah.
the thought process behind that?
So again, total scope creep. It all started with someone, I think it was Bowtie, was talking about having an item that was rum in the game, like alcohol,
Mhm.
and it was just for fun. And from that, you know, as all these scope creeps do, that turned into well, what if it does something, and you know, and so on and so forth. And this was a thing where like um originally what was happening was Bowtie and like a couple of people were messing around with ideas that like it's kind of more like you drink the potion and something magical happens, like fire bolts fly out of the player, or you know, a lightning blast shoots out of the player, or whatever. And I really pushed the guys to not do that because there's a million offensive things in Blade and Sorcery, you know. So I was saying, look, if it's going to be like a kind of a lore-based potion, what if we make it more utilitarian, and and so instead of it being like very overtly offensive, you know, kind of potion, make it kind of like a fun potion, but it has a little more practicality to it. So the one that came straight to mind was the flying potion. That was real. Like that'd be cool. Like whatever you drink a potion, you can float. Like
Yeah.
that, you know, that's not in the game. That would be fun. It's a little bit like Oblivion, where you could use, or sorry, Morrowind, where you had the fly spell. Um, and so kind of that's where the kind of the idea kind of started, and then I think it was Bowtie's idea about the fire potion, where it's like you drink and you belch flames basically. And okay, that is completely offensive, but I still like the idea because you could picture it. It's kind of like it could be almost like a fun little thing, but then the
Yeah.
player's going to use it as an offensive weapon. That's cool. And then I really was asking for, well, could we also add another little effect, which is that you kind of glow afterwards. So it's almost like kind of like a light potion too.
Hmm.
And then the electricity one was the hardest. We thought for a long time about that, and there was all sorts of ideas. Some ideas were like it's a little bit like the Flash or something. Like you drink it and then you kind of dash forward in a straight line and stuff. Some ideas were like, oh, maybe you move really fast. And it was all kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. But is it fun? You know, like is that a novel kind of thing? And then I think it was Bowtie again who came up with the idea of the magnetism and messing around with the idea like that anything metal gets caught in your orbit and it'll literally orbit around you as you walk, which is super cool. And that was like, yeah, that's a cool idea because again, it's not overtly offensive use, but you could see how it'd be useful if you're surrounded by a bunch of guys, take a swig of the potion, and the weapons all get yanked out of their hands, and metal guys get scooped up into the air, and then suddenly it's kind of like there's a utility associated. You know, that's really cool.
It is.
So that's how that came about.
They do look really fun to mess around with.
Yeah, they're really fun. Some of them are like the gravity one in particular is really dangerous because you go really high and you know there's no feather fall. So if you're not grabbing onto something, or if you're, you know, if you don't get down in time, you just fall to the ground.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous.
All right. I think that concludes my questions about Centara. I have one question about the Byeth, and then I'll quickly ask about PSVR and next Frog. The Byeth updates are projected to release upwards until the end of this year, right?
Yeah, that's the estimate. Yeah.
When the Byeth updates are completed, do you think, like, is there going to be anything more, or is there going to be, like, is that going to be, okay, now here's the next game in early access or something?
Yeah, it's a real good question because, I mean, to be fair, there wasn't even supposed to be these updates. When we hit 1.0, we were like, okay, that's it. Like, now we're going to work on a new game. You know, we'll be back with the new game. See you then. So these updates are already, like, a lot. And then the fact that they scope creep way out of control is the other thing. So it's like, you know. But, so, I mean, for now, I'm saying the last planned update is the Madlu update at the end of the year. Or the end of, the end of the year. But, you know, who knows? But the only thing is, I really want the team to move on to the next video game because, I mean, we're using the new Thunder Road framework. It's going to be a lot cooler. You're going to, you know, a lot of problems we had in Blade and Sorcery are going to be able to be ironed out. And it's just a bigger project. You know what I mean? So, like, the more time we spend on Blade and Sorcery, the less time we spend on the new game. You know what I mean?
Right.
So trying to kind of strike that balance, you know, like not wanting to leave the fans like too long, like left outside in the rain, you know, waiting for new content. But at the same time, like if we're not able to really dig down or hunker down and dig into the new development, you know, it'll never finish.
Right.
So I can't say for sure, but for sure, the only thing I can say is that the plan for now is just to do these updates and then switch over to new game and really get stuck into new game. And at that point, you're going to start seeing, you know, stuff of the new game. I'll be out there posting videos. It'll be like the old days, you know, with Blade and Sorcery.
Yeah.
I'll be posting gameplay videos. I'll be posting features, news, doing Q&As. And I don't know how long development will take. Hopefully not too long. But then, you know, then we can release.
Right.
So it'll be exciting.
I am really excited for the new game. That kind of brings into the next question. Is there anything you can say about the new game? Like the theme, the mechanics?
I can't talk about the team yet, even though I'm dying to. I am dying to. It's super cool. We have a real basic prototype made right now. So we're still very far away from, having like a real showable product. But we have a big meeting tomorrow, in fact, about where we're all meeting to talk about the lore of the new game and the story and what it's going to be. That's going to be huge. Um, but I can't really talk about the actual what is the game, not yet, anyway. But what I can say is, it shares a ton of DNA with Blade and Sorcery in the sense that like you're gonna play it and you're gonna say this feels like it was made by Warprog, like the physics simulation, the freedom of it, the immersion. There is a story, but there's also going to be sandbox, and it's there's always going to be that sandboxy freedom, where we don't have game features, we don't have tutorials or UIs, like all that's still true.
Right.
So you're definitely gonna play it, and you're gonna kind of like how you play a Rockstar game. You play Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto or Bully. That's like they're three completely different things, but you play them and you're like, oh, this is made by Rockstar. Like it just feels like Rockstar. So that's the only thing I can kind of say regarding the game. And then other than that, it'll be super modder friendly, of course, as always. Super modder friendly, and yeah, I think that's about really all I can say.
Okay. Can you say anything about how you're expecting it to release? Like, is it going to follow the same thing of Blade and Sorcery, or is it just going to be full release on this day specifically?
Funny enough, that's a hot topic we're discussing right now. So I can't say with absolute certainty right now. So this could change. So if you're listening to this could change. But I think what we're going to do is not release it like Blade and Sorcery, which is like the game is bare bones, and then it's like you're adding one new feature per update, and new feature, there's a new map, and there's new, another new feature, and then another new feature, until 2 years, 3 years later, you have the full game. So we're not planning that. Well, but at the same time, I don't think we have the production capacity to release it as the entire thing. So what we're thinking about right now is that what way we might be able to do it is release it episodically, where it's like the game is completely polished, all the features are there. There's going to be a sandbox mode, and that's a whole thing. There's going to be the story mode, completely polished, except the story mode will only be Act 1 of 3.
Ooh.
And then when the new update releases, it's going to be Act 2, and it's free. You just get it. And then when the last act releases, it's going to be the final part of the story, and it's free. It's a free update. But all the features will be in Act 1. All the content will be in Act 1. It's just that you're missing the second and third part of the story. That's one idea we're exploring right now. And then that means the good part about that is then we won't be in production for like 5 years or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's like the players can actually be playing the game, and then all you're waiting for is like the next part of the storyline. And kind of like Baldur's Gate, basically,
Yeah.
And then the last part of the storyline. That's kind of what we're thinking we might be able to do.
Yeah, that would be really sick.
Yeah, and what's cool is like it wouldn't be like Blade and Sorcery in the sense that like you're waiting on features to get done. So this would be like all the features are there. And then the other cool thing is that unlike Blade and Sorcery, the first part when it's released, like on release day, we're aiming for a polished product. So we're not aiming to release like a buggy thing, or we're not aiming to release a feature incomplete. It's going to be like this is actually really polished. All you're missing is 2 parts of the story. That's all you're missing. And then it's something to look forward to too,
Yeah, something to look forward to. Kind of like Dispatch, where they released new things on like a weekly basis, I think. I've not actually played Dispatch.
And what's kind of worked out really good for us is when we were writing the story, it was me and Shrew who did the story, and it kind of just really worked out because it's kind of like each act kind of has a beginning, middle, and end. So there's kind of a very natural flow to the game. So that's what we're exploring right now. But we're, as I say, we're yet to really deep dive into development. Um, so like we're going to be having big conversations about this soon. So we should know more probably in the next months of how we're going to do it exactly.
Okay. This is just a really quick question, and it's probably, to be expected. Uh, Oculus, like, standalone headsets, will the new game be also on standalone headsets?
Yeah, it most certainly will. But again, this is something we haven't fully discussed or figured out. But I think it could be possible that we might do it kind of like Nomad, where we release PCVR and then a separate standalone. But at the same time, um, I think we're aiming for the Quest 3 as a standalone, as opposed to Quest 2, because the Quest 2 is so old now, and
Yeah,
I mean, you know yourself, it's just not, it
it's
doesn't have
not.
the hardware for good visuals and stuff like that. But the Quest 3 is not bad, you know. So if the game was super well optimized, it would be amazing if it could be like one version. But I personally don't think so. I think the PC is always going to be much ahead, and I think the guys are going to want to make a really like high graphics, high physics version. So we'll see how it optimizes, but I think it would be pretty amazing if it was able to be just one version. I don't think it will be possible though. We'll see.
All right. One final question. This is kind of like a little. This is just a personal question of mine. Uh, Earlier, and by earlier I mean like like a month ago, I was reading about uh this island in Blade and Sorcery of a bunch of undead, like in a
Yeah,
tomb.
Greystone.
Yeah, Greystone.
Mm-hmm.
Was that planned to be like someplace the player could visit, or like
Mm-hmm.
DLC?
That's exactly it. Like that was one of those ideas for an expansion pack, you know, where it's like, well, what if we had a Centara expansion pack and, you know, it could feature Greystone as the primary location. Greystone could be the dungeons. The new kind of enemy could be maybe some kind of weird undead things. And, you know, and like there was all these ideas spinning, you know, it was exciting. And like me and Cosby would chat about it, like real excited, you know, like what crazy stuff we could do in the future. So that was just always going to be like a little nugget, like a little teaser. And then the kind of secret dream was, oh, someday we do like an expansion and it will shock people because it'll be like, oh, this is, I read a little nugget about this, you know, in the shopkeeper lore. But as I say, you know, we got completely derailed by the game framework, you know, it just made it impossible to continue. So it's real
Yeah.
disappointing for us. But I think if ever something was to happen, I think it would be more likely that it'd be like Blade and Sorcery 2. You know, like if someday we made a sequel to Blade and Sorcery and we made it completely fresh on the new game framework, Thunder Road 2, and we went for like a much bigger production and do like all the places of Byeth, you know, and like real, much more ambitious game. That would be how I think that would ever happen.
Okay. And I think this is probably the final question. How is PSVR coming along?
PSVR, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. It's a little bit in a gray area right now. It's a little bit in peril. Basically, what happened was Cosby got a dev kit finally, and so we were, and you know, 1.0 was settled. We were finally able to explore that. So he started exploring a port, and there was some cool stuff like uh, for example, the PSVR is actually pretty powerful. So the version of the game would be like PC,
Yeah.
PCVR as opposed to Nomad. So that was like, oh, that's real cool. So the PlayStation version is going to be like PCVR. That's really cool. And then there was some bad stuff like, you know, bugs and visual bugs. And so kind of like the takeaway was like, okay, so like there's a bunch of work to be done. But it, you know, it's not the end of the world. Then what happened was we started working on these updates, Blade and Sorcery updates, and the development of the new video game started getting, you know, serious. and then there was a bunch of administration stuff on Warfrog side too. So Cosby got busy. So PSVR 2 was put on the shelf with the intent to be like, okay, we'll come back to this. But you know how these things go. The workload ends up being way more. The scope creep on the updates ends up being too much. And then we also needed to switch over to Unity 6, which is something the players are not going to feel at all, but we have to do it because it's the only way we can continue maintaining all the different versions of the game.
Right.
And so that was always something we had to do. But when Wooly started looking into it and Cosby started looking into it, it was like, oh no, it was like, this is a lot of work. And the amount of bugs and breakage that's causing is like, oh God. So like we don't even have the like proper QA team to deal with that. So like that's a big horrible thing. That ends up being way much more horrible than we thought. And that needs to happen before we can port. And so all this kind of happened, and now it's kind of like, it's really cast a shadow on the PlayStation port, because it's like, we just don't know when we're ever going to get the time to do this. It's going to be such a huge workload too. You know, is there going to be a player audience there? We don't even know. You know what I mean? So it's a studio risk as well. So yeah, a lot of question marks there. So the latest on it was we're exploring possibilities of like outsourcing. Like, is it possible to either get Unity themselves to do a port, or is it possible that there could be another studio maybe we can work in partnership with, and they could do the port for us?
Right.
And then that, you know, that doesn't lock us down, and we can still be free to work on the Blade and Sorcery updates, free to work on the new game, and there's just another studio doing a very technical port, you know.
Right.
But that's a whole thing to explore. We're kind of in the middle of that right now, and it's also a big question, because if we go down that path, it's not it's expensive to do that. So there's a worry there, which is that like the amount of cost to do the port might be more than any revenue generated, you know, because
Right.
I believe the player base is quite small on PlayStation, so it's like that actually might end up costing the studio. So it's like, you know, we really want to do a PlayStation port because there is players who want to play, but at the same time, it's like we're going to eat a big old. Well, I won't say. I don't want to swear in your.
No, it's
on
all good. It's all good.
well, you know, eat a big old shit sandwich here, you know, because it's like this is going to kind of hurt the studio, but at the same time, it's like we really want to do it. So this is going to the conversations we're having right now. So I don't have a definitive answer. So it's very much in limbo right now. And we're going to see, which
Okay.
sucks. Oh, and then, you know, the other thing about it too is like, even if we did the port, we got a really definitive answer on mods from Sony, which is basically we cannot do mods. And the issue was to do with it kind of ends up being originally I thought it was a copyright issue, which that is a problem, but it ends up actually being a Unity issue, which was basically that Sony said we can't release any mods with shaders because players can inject code into shaders. And basically, the fear is that malicious code could be injected, and actually, even code could be injected that like probes the PlayStation hardware. Like, so,
Right.
like in terms of like corporate espionage and stuff, that's the reason they don't allow developers to do that.
Right.
But for us, it's like we're screwed because we you know we use Unity. There's no way for us to disable this.
Right.
And so we contacted Unity, and they were basically just like shrugging their shoulders, like, well, like I don't know, like, you know. So there's no way for us to get around this. So that basically means PlayStation couldn't have mods, same as, you know, PCVR and Nomad.
Right.
So that's kind of like, that sucks too. But you know, the only good thing is that at least the PlayStation version would be like PC quality, you know, graphics, and it would be like the full game. You know, it's not early access; it's the full game that includes all four Byeth expansions. So that's kind of cool, you know.
Mhm.
But it still sucks about mods.
Yeah, I can see that because Warfrog is all about like, with their games, all about like modding and whatnot.
Totally, like I love mods and modders. Like we absolutely love modders. So it sucks that PlayStation fans like can't enjoy that, like can't have their own communities, you know, like that really sucks. But it's truly not our fault. Like we really went to bat for it, and we tried, and we talked to Sony, we talked to Unity even, and there just really wasn't an option that we could work and do, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's all my questions.
Cool, man.
Alright. Thank you for coming on and doing this interview.
Yeah, no problem at all. Glad to do it. Thanks for chatting today.
No problem.